Blessings in Jesus' name. This video is a very serious one, a very heavy topic. It is my belief as a citizen of Ireland, as a Christian, with the welfare of others at the foremost of my list of priorities. In Jesus, of course, that this country, Ireland, is under an attack. And that attack is sedition. It is an intention to overthrow the government and the constitution as we know it. Now, one might say, well, there are processes which one can go through in order to alter the constitution, and that's often the case with amendments and voting and whatnot. Fine. That's one thing. I don't agree with a lot of the changes that have taken place with respect to same-sex marriage and abortion. I don't have to. It's not hate speech or anything like it to say that I don't agree with it. Otherwise, it would have never been up for vote. And are they claiming that it can never be revisited for vote? That wouldn't be democratic. It would be a dictatorship. And that's kind of what they've fashioned Ireland to be. And this is sedition. We are living in a day of sedition, and it's being hidden. It's covert sedition, covert treason. And they rely upon the ignorance of the nation, and often ignorance is, where people will chime in and say, oh, who you calling ignorant? As though it were like saying, you're ugly. It's not. Ignorance is a lack of knowledge. It's not just a slight or an insult or a derogatory term in the sense that you would mean it to inflict offence or something of that nature. It is simply a fact. Ignorance is a lack of knowledge. So through lack of knowledge, which the government are currently encouraging, they are deceiving the nations and committing acts which are treasonous and seditious. Sedition again means to overthrow the government, to render it null and void, theoretically or academically or in the implementation of its constitution, is sedition. You don't have to do it with an AK-47. It can be done. Sedition can be done with the pen, and is in our day currently being attempted by, namely, our own president, Michael D. Higgins. Yes, I do believe, it is my solemn belief, that Michael D. Higgins is committing acts of sedition. When he fails at the time where they put a bill on his table and say, President Michael D. Higgins, will you look at this bill for consideration for addition to the legislature? Now, I want to make a point at this stage. Legislature is not the Constitution. The Constitution is the core and fundamental law of the land, which is recorded and written down. It is the written law of the land. And the Constitution of Ireland is that. Constitution and written law are interchangeable terminologies or phrases. So the Constitution, or in Irish, Bunrachs na hÉireann, which is a little book of the law, which you can buy for under a fiver if you can find it. You'll get it online if you can't find the physical copy in your local community. Or perhaps you can buy it online, have it delivered to you. It's not a very expensive book and it's not an extensive read, but certainly a worthwhile one, so that you can't be deceived in ignorance. The Constitution of Ireland, again, is the written law. Therefore, it is the evidence of itself. The written law of the land is the evidence of itself. So for somebody to say that we must presume something that the President has enacted after he considered a bill and added it to the legislature, as legislature, constitutional in the absence of checking whether it's constitutional or not, we know that this action or this motion is a treasonous and seditious one, because the President of Ireland is supposed to be the custodian of the Constitution. That means he takes it from the grandfathers and hands it to the grandchildren. He is the caretaker of it, the keeper of it, the transporter of it through the generations. And that's why people go to him as the last sign-off to get something added to the legislature. Now, if the President is a corrupt man who won't uphold the Constitution of Ireland, then the entirety of the law is at risk. Now, if you have the legislator and the president in cahoots, you have a recipe for a takeover. Because the legislator is the one who adds things in, and the president is the one who passes them for addition. So if they pass something like the president can add anything he wants into the law and doesn't have to check whether it's lawful or not into the legislature, what do you think is going to happen after that? Do they think we're stupid? The president is the one who's designated to uphold the Constitution of Ireland. Oh, great. So nothing's going to get into the legislature that goes or fights against the law of the land. Well, that makes sense. And then they say, but he doesn't have to check if it's lawful or not before he adds it in. Well, what is the standard by which he's upholding the Constitution of Ireland then? And what is the standard by which he is deciding to make available to the public only legislature which is not fighting against the Constitution? So, to give you an example of how this might play out, somebody will approach the president and say, President Michael D., we have here for your consideration a bill which we would like added to the legislature. The legislature is like the fleshing out of the law. It's supposed to be a more in-depth fleshing out or descriptive on as to how the law should be implemented in a given situation. And therefore it naturally makes sense that it shouldn't be fighting against the Constitution. To give you an analogy, it'd be like the smaller branches on the end of the branch fighting against the tree they grow out of. It wouldn't make sense, would it? How will they grow? How will they be nourished? How will they be given power to? How will they be connected to what the people will for their country? If it's disconnected from what the people will for the country, in the sense that the branch has been disconnected from the vine or from the tree, then it's obviously not a corollary or in agreement, in other words, with the Constitution of Ireland. So if it's not a corollary or an agreement of the Constitution and an extension of it for the purposes of fleshing out an issue that was in some way ambiguous or unclear, so that they needed to flesh out the legislature a little bit more to make something easier to manage when the circumstances occur or arise, so that they could lawfully and procedurally deal with an issue, so that there wouldn't be confusion or difficulty in the procedure, then yes, a bill should be considered, if it's lawful and not fighting against the Constitution, for addition to the legislature. Of course, that's reasonable, because we're supposed to try and make daily living as easy and accessible to all people, especially in business. So the fundamental of the Constitution is do no harm to your neighbour. That's the fundamental. Fleshing that out a little bit more, that means be reasonable in business, which is not doing harm to your neighbour, isn't it? So it's all an extension, a corollary of harm not thy neighbour, love thy neighbour as thyself. And so when it fights against that, it fights against God's command for humanity, and it's basically leading humanity into harm's way. So what I'm saying to you now very clearly is, it is my solemn belief, based on my knowledge of the Constitution and the fundamentals of the position of the President and the legislator and the Constitution of Ireland, and how the President of Ireland, you can check this, is the custodian. When somebody's in custody of somebody else, if you're in the custody of the police, they have to not only keep you in one place, but also care for you while you're there, and then transport you safely to another place. So the job of the President is to protect, keep safe, transport through time the Constitution of Ireland from one generation to the next. It's a very serious and important role. Now, when your President is telling you, I don't have to check whether these bills are constitutional or not before I sign them in, he's an imposter committing sedition in our country. And currently that's what your President is telling you. I don't have to check whether something is lawful or not before I add it into the legislature. Well, yeah, you do. Yes, you do, absolutely. That's your fundamental position. That's why we pay you. That's what the presidency is. That's what it means to be president. It means to be the custodian of the Constitution of Ireland. Foremost, that is the law of the land, the written law of the land. So when somebody says, well, that is presumptively constitutional, I mean, that's idiotic. I mean, why would anybody presume something constitutional? I mean, I can't say this is presumptively a cup, because it is a cup. So what I'm saying to you is, if you know something, you can't presume it. And is the president claiming he doesn't know the Constitution? Because if he doesn't, he's not fit to do the job. But they're not only saying that, like people say, well, it's unreasonable to think that the president at his age is going to remember every word of the Constitution. Okay, well, let's entertain that for a second. He has the Supreme Court to refer to, some of the best barristers in the world to refer to find out whether a bill has been, in fact, handed to him which is constitutional before he considers it for the legislature. I mean, if he's not competent in the Constitution, why would he be the last one signing off on bills that are supposed to be added to the legislature or not? But okay, let's do that. Let's say, well, it has to be handed to one man. He has to do the signing. Yes, grand. Let's be reasonable. And we'll do the, come on now, in all fairness, if you want. Now, come on, in all fairness, why doesn't President Michael D., a relatively elder man, go to the Supreme Court to find out before, to be sure, because it's his job to uphold the Constitution and pass it on to the next generations, that something is constitutional before he signs it in? Why would it ever be a motion of any government ever, anywhere, to say, President, custodian of the Constitution, you don't have to check whether something is lawful before you sign it into the legislature? Why would anybody in any country, anywhere in the world ever say that to their president? You're the mechanic, right? But you don't have to check if there's air in the tyre. You don't have to check if there's fuel in the engine. You don't have to check if the engine's working properly. You're the mechanic, but you don't have to check if the car's not going to blow up when they drive it down the road. See, it doesn't make sense. It's not reasonable. So the term presumptively constitutional is ridiculous, because it claims that there's some excuse, feasible or entertainable, that a president who is custodian of the Constitution wouldn't check something for its constitutionality before signing it in and telling people they have to obey it as law. I mean, it's just headless Chickenville. It's just a madhouse. I mean, how it got this far is beyond me. But when you tell somebody, presume this constitutional, you're saying, stay in ignorance as to whether it is or it isn't constitutional, at least in practice, and obey what we tell you, or we might put you in prison for not obeying something that goes against the laws of your land. I mean, this is headless stuff. It's absolutely headless. It's basically stupid. Now, I'm not calling any of those men stupid. I believe them to be intelligent individuals. They wouldn't be where they are unless they were intelligent. That's why it's inexcusable what they're doing. You can't say, well, they're just a bit soft. They're just not as academic as others. You know, they're just not as heady as the next guy. That's not. These guys are highly educated. They are highly articulate, artistic individuals. It's not an excuse that they would not know this. It's just not a thing. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine your first year at law school and you're going, presumptively the answer to the question in the test is B. So, teacher, you presume that I've ticked the right box and I won't bother handing you up the test. Just presume that I got an A there, will you? Huh? No, there's a right answer and a wrong answer. There's things that are lawful and things that aren't lawful. No, I won't just presume that you tick the right answer and give you an A. That's ridiculous. Why am I sitting here if everybody's going to presume to get an A? Madhouse. So no, it's not an acceptable position of any government ever that's claiming to be a democracy to say, oh, the president can sign whatever he wants into the legislature and we don't have to check it for its lawfulness first, even though it's my job to uphold the law. So it's the job of the High Court, the job of the Court of Appeal in Ireland to uphold the law, yet they're telling people to presume things lawful and they haven't checked. Hey, just think that this is lawful. Well, have you checked? No. Why? We don't have to. Why? The legislator told us. Who's that? The President. Isn't he upholder of the Constitution of Ireland? Yeah. Well, does he not know what the Constitution is? Don't know. Do you know what I mean? Are you seeing what I'm saying here? This is clearly an attempt to overthrow the Irish government and trample the Constitution of Ireland underfoot. And they have knowingly, and it's been proven in the High Court of Ireland, legislated for something that saw me personally wrongfully imprisoned for a month and my liberty of speech removed for 2 years wrongfully, which was ruled by Miss Justice Siobhan Phelan in the High Court. This man had injustices perpetrated against him by the state, a month in prison and 2 years disallowed from public speaking under threat of imprisonment. On another occasion told not to walk on the main street at all, anywhere near it. You're not allowed on the main street. I mean, absolutely preposterous requests. And then when it was brought before the High Court and the judge ruled, Miss Justice Siobhan Phelan ruled, this man was wrongfully imprisoned. This man had his liberties removed for 2 years and she didn't compensate me 1 cent. She did not motion for restitution at all. And then she said, it remains an open question whether the sections under which you were unlawfully imprisoned and unlawfully told not to speak for 2 years, it remains an open question as to whether they are constitutional or not. Do you see what I'm saying to you? So they're saying, yeah, it's clear that these legislations are seeing people wrongfully imprisoned and not allowed to speak, even though you can speak in prison. They think they can stop people speaking outside of prison, but not in prison. You do the math on that one. And they say, oh no, we're not actually allowed to do that. That was wrong. But you're not getting any compensation. Thank you, come again. And then number 1 on the schedule on the same court case was test the constitutionality of sections 115 and 117 of the Criminal Justice Act 2006. And Miss Justice Siobhan Phelan said, I abandoned that test and gave no reason for doing so, but just claimed it remained an open question, which of course was obvious. Don't know why she needed to write that down. Just to add insult to injury. I mean, are we stupid? We know you abandoned the test because you haven't made a ruling on it. Oh, I abandoned. You walk into a dirty house. Oh, I didn't clean it. You're joking. So that's basically what happened. She didn't clean house. She was tasked with finding out whether those sections were lawful or not, and she didn't clean house. She left it like a filthy pigsty and basically said, oh, I didn't clean the house, by the way. Oh no, go figure. You just got all these barristers together. Basically, you hired, advanced cleaning. You brought them to the house. You got your rug doctor and all the available cleaning agents, and then you left the house in a pigsty, in a mess. And instead of giving reason as to why you didn't do all of that, which was the pending question, you just said, I didn't clean the house. That'll be all. and just sat down in the muddy puddle and said no more, and then made no compensation or restitution order, which is your constitutional duty as judge who makes a ruling that somebody's been wrongfully imprisoned. It should be in the millions, the compensation. It should be. And do you know what happened? This is according to the law of Ireland. Do you know what happened after that? The High Court were judicially reviewing the same court case and vaguely mentioned that something about, there was a testing of the constitutionality of section 115, 117. That never happened. I just thought, and these people are happy with that? That they're judicially reviewing something that didn't happen? Meanwhile, this man was wrongfully imprisoned and 2 years removed from speaking publicly. And what happens? I want you to really think about this now. What happened? The Court of Appeal, 3 judges were employed, very well paid judges, taxpayer, were employed. And what happened? They said, we're not going to judicially review this. We'll throw it out. Go away. And they said, we'll give Mr. Tallon his 150 quid for the day's cost in court. Because I had to come up from Wexford, you know. So they saw that I had been wrongfully imprisoned for a month, my liberty of speech removed for 2 years under threat of imprisonment, and felt that I was deserving of compensation and gave me €150 for my bus fare. Are they for real? And you know what they added in their ruling? We must consider these sections of 115 and 117 presumptively constitutional. This is coming from your highest court of appeal, the highest court of judicial review in Ireland, the Court of Appeal. 3 heavily well-paid judges, highly educated and highly experienced because they weren't new, they were long in the tooth. And what happened? This is presumptively constitutional. We pay 3 judges to uphold the law of Ireland, and they're telling us we should remain ignorant as to what it is and just comply with whatever we're told to. That's coming from your Court of Appeal now. That's coming from the highest Court of Appeal in Ireland. Are you understanding? They're telling us that we have to be ignorant as to what the law is. The highest Court of Appeal in Ireland is telling the Irish people to remain ignorant as to what the law is and do what the fake custodian of the Constitution, Michael D. Higgins, is telling you to do. And why do you think that is? The likelihood is because of their bro handshaking down the Freemasonic Lodge. And those guys are sworn to prioritise their brother connection in Freemasonry over their duties to the Irish people. Because I was a Freemason up until Master Mason, and then when I realised this is Satan's synagogue, I left. And Michael D. Higgins is an open Freemason. And I have that from a Freemason, because I was one, that Michael D. Higgins is a Freemason. That means that he's breaking what the Irish Constitution says. The Irish Constitution says you cannot be a member of a secret society and a member of a state. And specifically talks about An Garda Síochána. Well, of course it's across the board. It's not just An Garda Síochána. If guards can't be members of secret societies, neither can the President, because it's counterintuitive. If the rhetoric and the goal and the narrative of Freemasonry differs from that of the Irish people in the Constitution, you know, any president is going to be torn because he's going to want to implement his belief system that comes from Freemasonry. And there's Rosicrucian, the fake Jews, the synagogue of Satan, the Jews, the ones who claim they are Jews and they're not but are synagogue of Satan. That's Freemasonry. the modern day manifestation of it. So Freemasonry is an interferer in government, and it tries to implement "do as thou wilt," the satanic motto, into the fabric of society. And so where its starting point is, just presume that whatever we tell you is lawful. Oh no. No, President. Your job is to uphold the Constitution of Ireland. That's what we pay you for as President. Don't be telling us to remain ignorant as to what you're supposed to be implementing. That's like somebody saying, I'm here to paint the wall, but stay ignorant as to what a painted wall looks like. I'm here to fix your car. I'm here to fix your car, but remain ignorant as to what a fixed car looks like. That's what that is. That's what presumptively constitutional is. Stupid. Counterproductive, counterintuitive nonsense. I'm here to do your accounts, but please please understand when the revenue knocks on your door that that's nothing to do with me. You know, that kind of thing. When the negative fallout happens, the ramifications and the bad thing happens as a result of my bad work, don't blame me. Stay ignorant. Presumptively constitutional is foolish and nonsensical. It is a lie and a contradiction in terms. We have the written law of the land. It is the Constitution. The custodian is the President. That means he's the caretaker of it. If he doesn't know what it is, how can anybody else hope that our children will inherit it? It has to be, that is, you can inherit something as a book written down in black and white, but inheriting it as being implemented by the government is a different thing. It has to be implemented by the government. It's useless just on a page. So when they're telling you presumptively constitutional, that means they don't want to implement your constitution, and they're calling you under threat of imprisonment. That's a big step forward. That's a big leap for them. Because now, when they say presume something constitutional, they're saying we have the army behind us, and if you don't do what we tell you, we can use it. We can use the police force, and they have the army behind them. You must presume this is the law. So they're pointing the army and the police at you and saying, presume this is the law. Oh, no, 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 we won't. No, no, I'm not afraid of you. We won't. If you're trying to overthrow the government here in Ireland by saying presume things constitutional which aren't, you're a criminal at large. That's an act of sedition and high treason. That's very, very serious crime. It doesn't get any worse than that. People used to be killed for that in generations gone by, and quite recently, actually, in the last century, the death penalty was for sedition and treason in Ireland. They only recently removed it. Any surprise there that they removed the death penalty for treason and then start committing it? Hand over fist? Over and over again? In quick succession? And leading the people into ignorance? Willful ignorance, and keeping them busy with COVIDs and lockdowns and all sorts of stuff while they do it. It's no surprise, it's no mistake. They're trying to collapse your constitution and put something else in its stead, and ask you to remain in ignorance so you don't sense it coming. Well, I sense it coming. I've seen it, I've exposed it in the High Court and the Court of Appeal, and shown that they are corrupted, because they're telling the Irish people, presume this is lawful, when it's their job, actually their job, to remove any ambiguity in the writings in legislature or acts and statutes. It's their job, their role. Supreme Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, all of those courts are to uphold the law, remove ambiguity as to what is lawful for the continued implementation of it, and to remove anything that might fight against that, to detect it early on and to ensure it doesn't go in, or if it somehow slips in, to remove it. So there are these different stages of filtration. I brought it into the High Court, which is a latter stage of filtration, and they said we've abandoned the test. That is an omission, that's an admission, of guilt. When they say we abandon the testing of the constitutionality of that, that's an admission of guilt. So they're already admitting guilt, that they're guilty of failing in their office. The very term presumptively constitutional is sedition. Just the term. Whoever put that term into the writings committed treason and sedition. Treason is, it can be like betraying a monarch. But if you don't have a monarchy, it's just betraying the state. It's betraying the constitution, betraying the people who hand the law to the government to carry it out and implement it. And that's effectively what has happened here. They have betrayed your family, your household, and your future generations. They have betrayed, they have betrayed the legacy of the Irish people. They've betrayed the grandfathers, the forefathers, the implementers of the Constitution, the men who fought on Vinegar Hill to fight for the rights of the Irish, the very heritage of Wexford. They've been fighting against all of that when they tell you presume something constitutional. It is a systemic attack and a seditious attempt to overthrow. It is treasonous, and it is militarised and mobilised through the seat of president. They went straight for the top. They didn't mess around. They went straight to the top, straight to the president, put the Freemason in the seat, and then they said, don't check these things for their constitutionality, just sign them in. The boldness of them. Why? Because they knew their heads wouldn't roll off their shoulders because they'd removed the death penalty. Now, I don't advocate for the death penalty. I just tell people that was the punishment to show people, to stress to people the seriousness of the corruption. It is so systemic, and it can actually really very seriously harm the common good because it doesn't implement or uphold the laws of Ireland or any state. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So your country, Ireland, is under attack. There is a treasonous act of sedition, and it is manifesting as the term, an implementation of the term, which is coined as presumptively constitutional. It is a nonsensical term. Presumptively means to assume. These are synonymous terms, or similes, or similar phrases. They are interchangeable terms which can mean the same things in the same context. It basically means, the Constitution means the law of the land. And the term presumptively means to assume and to presume. And to assume means to know that something is without evidence. So to just lack that evidence, right? So to lack evidence to confirm something or deny it. So if you lack evidence, you have to make an assumption. So that's why I can't presume this is a cup, because I know it is. I can't presume it and know it. Do you see what I'm saying to you? Very simple. So because I can't presume it and know it, if I make a presumption, I'm claiming I don't know it. And that's a lie. The government do know the law of the land, so they can't presume something constitutional. They do know the law of the land, they do have it in writing, they do have evidence. So they can't make an assumption. They can't actually feasibly, practically make an assumption because they have the evidence. It's their job not to. It's their job to be sure that what's written is constitutional. That's actually their function. So they're now telling people pervasively throughout Ireland, disseminating a charge and a command, actually, presume things that aren't constitutional are constitutional, on the basis that we don't know whether they are and or haven't done the check to ensure they are lawful, even though that's our job. This is treason and sedition. It's a hideously ugly attack on Ireland. And it's happening through the seat of President now. And it needs to stop. In Jesus' mighty name, if he so willeth it, so shall it be. In Jesus' mighty name, be blessed. I love you, Ireland. I love the people of Ireland. I hate corruption. Again, this is not a headhunt, but they need to get their act together quickly, because they run the risk of lifetime in prison. Blessings in Jesus' name. A holy kiss.